challenging chapter of the Bible, and I just want to throw out your way. I want to plant a couple of words in your mind and your heart as we go through this. Is the word forgiveness. You might not see the word forgiveness, but I want to apply this chapter Genesis 13 we're going to be in. And not only that, but seeking the path of peace in relationships and different things. And this is a huge word that God kept saying to me, is that choosing the path of peace will always be better than trying to be right all the time. Okay? And I was really challenged by that. If you were a married man, if you're wrong, you're really wrong. If you're right, you're still wrong. No, but the thing is, God's, now from here's where they should have taught me in college how to do a transition, because I don't know. I'm going to go right to where I was going, because God's going to bring you blessing, but sometimes when God brings blessings to you and maybe in your family, that sometimes it's going to create tension in your life. I'll give you a couple examples, and this may be like a dream to some of us, but you may, in your job at some point, got more money. Anybody ever got a raise at work? Maybe 10 cents an hour, right? Some of us. And if you have more money in your life, that means you have more responsibility. I have $1 million, now I can do whatever I want. Now you got to be very responsible with more money. Maybe you have more success. That means more pressure. People expect more if you have success. If you have more influence, I prayed 20 years ago in my life that for God, for the things of God, I want to have influence. Not that I'm God, but I want to be a tool that God is using to bring people to Him. And when you have more influence, you have more expectations. Okay? Sometimes if you have more people in your life, how many of you guys have so many friends that you can't even count them on? You have 1 million friends, right? How many of us, you'd be happy with just one friend. Think about if you have a lot of people that are in your life, good and bad, indifferent, there creates more conflict. The more people in your life, there can be more conflict. So the word of the sermon that I'm going to, not just peace and forgiveness, but I'm going to throw your way the word conflict. So I want to ask you, is there conflict in your life, not only with maybe finances or job, but maybe relationships? Is there a relationship in your life that there is conflict, or there's a rift in the relationship, and God is wanting to bring healing and wholeness and forgiveness? Because I say this a lot in my life, because it's so true in my life, that the longer you have bitterness in your life towards other people, the more it's like cancer cells to your spirit and your heart. And those of us who know me know that, but if you don't know who I am, I come from a background of being bitter towards people, to some people. Okay, not everybody. I've had some good people in my life. I had a good family, have a good family. I have a twin brother that we're pretty closer now. We live like hours away. I don't know how many hours, like 20 hours away. And we're closer now than ever, but we kind of joke around and stuff. But so I had in my history bitterness, and what was happening to my spirit and my heart and my relationships with other people and with God was my heart was shriveling. And then God allowed me the mercy and the grace to be able to say, I release it. I want to seek peace, the path of peace towards people. And I'm telling you, it's like I even years and decades later, I feel so much better towards God and towards people, that I can look at people in the eye, even if they've wronged me, and I can see, I'm trying to see their perspective. Sometimes people treat people poorly because of how they've been treated. In the old days, someone treat me bad, they're on my enemy list, they're done. I'm done. I'm not going to pray for them. I don't want them to go to heaven. But now it's like, no, if Jesus himself said, pray for those who persecute you, who are against you. And so Genesis 13, it opens up, I want you to read this story like a journey. The story of God, if you read Genesis all the way through, especially the Old Testament, some of us are afraid to even tackle the Old Testament because it's long, right? And there's different genres. And it's not really in story order all the time, okay? It's, again, a book, you want to have that. But what it is, it's the story of God showing up with broken people. Like I said a moment ago before this, some people choose obedience. And every time I find someone in the Bible that is obedient to God, God rewards them. God blesses them. God does amazing things in their life. But the other person, when they choose disobedience time after time, God is still good, but at the same time, God releases some of that anointing and that blessing over their lives. He lets them do their own thing, and then it's like being on a high-rise walkway. If I was on that beam, there's a beam right there, right above me. If I was walking on the roof and that was the only beam and I had no protection, knowing me, I would fall because I can't, anybody can do that kind of thing without falling? Me, I just fall. And so what God does is when you obey Him, He's giving you this hedge of protection. He's giving you this way of having a peace in your heart and mind. And so what happens in Genesis 13 is both Abram and Lot, because last week we were talking about Abram getting the call of God. I want you to go west. I'm not going to tell you exactly where you're going to go, but you're going to go west. And I want you to get your nephew Lot and his family. So finally, between chapter 12 and 13, they've traveled closer to Egypt. Okay, when they get there, they are both blessed. I want to modernize this for a minute. Both Lot and Abram are multimillionaires, maybe even billionaires. Okay, they don't have that much money, like literally, but if we were to translate today's income, that's how much they have. In fact, they have so much cattle because it wasn't about money like this. It was about land and about cattle. Okay, and they had so much cattle that literally the land doesn't have enough. If I look at Google, if I Google Egypt in different places, I go, what are you talking about? There's a bunch of land, isn't there? Like, wow. But things are a little bit different. They were bumping into each other, and what happened in that was the people that were in charge of the cattle, the herdsmen, they were fighting and bickering and going, no, I serve Abraham, and Abraham is the man that's been called by God. He should get priority. Lot is nobody. Lot's just lucky to be here. Right? And so there could be some conflict. Now I want you to go back to your conflict with your people. When was the last, you don't have to say out loud, or I'm going to testify when I was wrong. No, don't do that. Just imagine right now the last time that maybe you were right, and you wanted to tell the person that was wrong how right you really were. Now you're looking at someone that has never done that. Okay? I mean, if every time that I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong, right? Don't shake your head. You're wrong. I'm just kidding. I am being facetious right here. Yes, there are times where I will not want to admit that I'm wrong. And especially maybe if I'm right, it doesn't help to say, honey, you're looking at a man right now that knows more than you right now, and I'm just a lot smarter than you. I would probably get a slap across the face. No, I wouldn't. She's never done that. But I would be in trouble. And Abram is the one who in this story, he has every right to say, I want everyone around here to know I'm the man that's been called by God. I'm the one that has first dibs on what land to get. You ever have dibs when you're a kid? Right? Yeah, me too. Like when we open up a pack of baseball cards, me and my brother, we'd get dibs on which cards to get. I get the Ken Griffey Jr. That was always if we got one, I got Ken Griffey Jr. Never got one. Okay? And those used to be worth a couple dollars. Now they're worth about $10. But the thing is about this one, Abram has to decide, will I fight for position, like I'm the man of God, or am I going to fight for peace or reconciliation, keeping the family together? Some of you guys, your family needs reconciliation. And the first step towards that is prayer for you and for them, but starting with you. Even if you're right, pray for your heart. So, big idea for this story of this sermon is sometimes God tests your faith not by what He asks you to sacrifice. Sacrifice is huge. But sometimes He will ask you to let go of things like being right. Sometimes He will ask you to let go of tension, to seek restoration. Now, if you read the Bible, this is why you can read the whole Bible. It takes a while. Don't read it all in one day. Okay? I'll say right now, you don't have to read the Bible all from cover to cover in 1 year. Take your time. Chew on it a little bit. The Bible calls it meditate on it. But the thing that you learn is that sometimes, maybe always, you have to seek peace. Sometimes they won't answer that peace. but you do your part and I do my part, and leave the rest up to God. Okay, peace is greater than being right. Peace is better than having the last word. How many of us need to have the last word? Okay, I like that. That's honest, because me too. We're there. I'm there with you, man. Right, Lyd? Who has to have the last word? I think, and I may get in trouble for this, I think we both want to have the last word. Do you know what that creates? Hayden's shaking his head, or nodding, whatever. If you have to have the last word, nobody wins. And I'm a preacher, so I'm a talker. You know, and I got to prove, I'm giving Lydia the 3-point sermon, that's what she calls it, a 3-point sermon on why I'm right and why she's wrong. Then all of a sudden I'm in trouble and wishing I wouldn't have said that. But the reality is, peace is better than having the last word and having tension in your relationship. And God honors those who seek the path of peace. And that brings us to point number 1. In the story of Abram, which in a couple weeks will be, his name will change to be Abraham. But God blesses them, both Lot and Abram, but blessing often creates some pressure. There's more responsibility. There's more reason for you to go, well, God's blessed me. I'm the one that's supposed to be the one that's making the decisions around here. I'm the man. I'm the man of God. You're going to listen to me. But what it does in the story in verse 1 through 7 is it creates pressure for all of them. And so let's go to Genesis chapter 13. And again, they're multimillionaires. And how do I know that? Because look at what they have. Look what Abram has. It says in verse 1 and 2, so Abram left Egypt and he traveled north into the Negev. The thing about the north of Egypt, it's in those days especially, very fertile. Very fertile land. It was beautiful, and you could see beauty from miles and miles and miles. And that will come into play in just a moment in the story. Okay? And along with his wife and Lot and all that they owned, and here's a little side note from Moses here. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. So not only did he have money, if you want to call it that, he had resources and he had livestock. So much livestock that the livestock is bumping into each other. That's mind-boggling to think about. Because look, why not just let them spread out a little bit, you know? Hey, Lot, why don't you push your... No, they're bumping into each other. So he's very blessed, very rich, but so is Lot. Look at verse 5. Lot, who is traveling with Abram. Now, Lot is his nephew. And so Uncle Abram is very rich, but so is nephew Lot. Lot, who was also traveling with Abram, had also become everybody say very wealthy. Very wealthy. Now, some of us, maybe all of us, wish we had more money. Now, again, I want to be very clear. The love of money is the root of all evil, not money, right? Some people say, oh, money is the root of all evil. I've heard many people say it. That's not what it is. The love of money, the worship of money, the elevation of money. Money is a resource, but we all wish we had a little bit more. But more means more pressure, more decisions to make. What am I going to do with this money? Some of us have the opposite problem. How do I get more money? But he became very wealthy with flocks of sheep and goats, herds of cattle, and many tents. Apparently, and I'm just assuming that he would go to Abram and say, can I borrow a few gold coins? I need to go to the local store, right? So, but he had many tents. You know, you go, oh, that's just a few dollars. No, tents had to be made. Leather, that kind of thing. Something had to be sacrificed for that tent to be created. So he was very rich. I might call Abraham a billionaire and maybe Lot just a small little billionaire. That's our millionaire, that's all. They're both rich, okay? But, so there's a bunch of things going on, but then comes the tension. Everything's good so far, and I want you to realize something. If you've been studying Genesis with us up to this point, there's a lot of sin, disobedience, horrible things. Sin is not the problem here. It could have been sin by actually keep going with the bitterness and fighting and bickering. When you start bickering and fighting, it turns into bitterness. That could be a sin. Why? Because now all of a sudden bitterness turns into hatred. How do you know that? Because I've been there, done that. Okay? I know that bitterness turns into hatred. And hatred turns into fantasy of what I want to do to them, or I want to avoid them, I don't want to love them anymore. And it could have been that way. This story is not about sin. For the very first time, it's actually that the tension is created by God's blessings, which is a weird thing to think about. But verse 6 and 7, but the land could not support both Abram and Lot with all their flocks and herds living so close together. That's mind-boggling, but that means, here's what that means. They were very wealthy, incredibly wealthy. I mean, when I was a kid, and I don't like mentioning Bill Gates anymore, but when I was a kid, Bill Gates was the guy that they talked about who was being rich. They always mentioned it. Because I lived over in Western Washington, and me and Lydia, when we were in college, we would walk past his big, huge mansion. We couldn't see it, but we're like, psst, that's Bill Gates' house over there. And then the gate had a guard, and they're like kind of moving us on, that kind of thing. But I was trying to look at his house. But think Bill Gates back in the 90s type of rich. So what happened? So disputes broke out. That's a very kind thing of saying they were arguing, fighting, they were taking ownership. I own your land, you're in my land. It's like being married and you're on my side of the bed. Okay? This is my, no, move, just move. But so disputes broke out between the herdsmen of Abram and Lot. So they have people working for them that are starting to fight. Now, that could have got to Lot and Abram. What are they going to, they have to choose what they're going to do. And also at that time, Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land. So there's so many different people that God's blessings was too much. They had Abram and Lot both had to choose how they're going to respond to this problem. Now, I want you to think, when you have a dispute with other people, and I want to be honest, the people you work with, the people you're married to, your kids, your grandkids, your mom, your dad, whoever, your family, your brothers, sisters, whoever. When you have disputes going on, you can't control that because sometimes you're going to disagree with people. Look, I say this all the time. I'm going to have disagreements with my wife and kid because I have disagreements with me, right? I don't agree with everything I do. I'm like, what am I doing? Joel, you are, right? So if I disagree with me, I'm going to definitely disagree with them. The thing is, we have a choice of how we're going to respond to that dispute or that arguing or that tension. And it's kind of like, and this only happened once in my life. I don't really have office jobs a lot. But when I was in college, it was the coolest thing. When I was in college, I had the biggest church office in the whole church building. Okay, I was over north of Seattle. And it was so cool. Here's the problem. There was two of us in the office all of a sudden. I had the office first, but there was a guy that moved in and he put all the stuff on my desk. Now, I couldn't care less about that kind of stuff now, but back then, the thing about being a pastor, I want my own desk. I want my own office. I want to have that title. You call me pastor. Because some people say, what do I call you? Just call me Joel. I don't care, right? But back then, you call me pastor. And you don't sit at my desk. But his name was Dan. And we were friends. I knew him in school, in college. But we had to borrow the same space. And there was tension, right? This is kind of how this is in a sense. They're trying to live their life, a good life, with like limited space, apparently, according to this. So sometimes tension in your life isn't because something's wrong with you. Sometimes it's because God is allowing tension in your life because He's calling you to maturity. Okay, and I don't like that word either. Like when someone says grow up, or someone says, you know what, you're acting immature. When was the last time that someone called you immature? The other day? Okay, if you're married, when was the last time that you got called immature? Okay, don't say it out loud, but the thing is, God is always calling us to maturity. And He will allow tension to help you mature, or you could choose wrong, but it's never the right thing. So Abram does the hard thing. Abram chooses peace over position, being right. He could have easily said, I am the man that has the call. Lot, you're just like my little buddy. He's his nephew. Here, come on, bud, let's go. Yeah, we're going to the promised land at some point. But he actually chooses what God wants him. He chooses peace over that. And he steps into the conflict with two things, maturity and humility. Now, I wrote this down yesterday. I was practicing this at home, and I wrote this down because I want to ask this question. Do you handle conflict with maturity? How many of us handle conflict with maturity all the time? Every time? None of us. So I'm glad that you said that. Even if you didn't say it, you said it in your heart. I could hear it. Okay? The thing is, this is for all of us then. We choose peace, or I'd even call it the path of peace. You will do whatever you take to get on that road that gets to peace, because sometimes you can't solve things like instantly. A 30-year-old disagreement with somebody can't be handled in 20 seconds. This is not like if you're watching TV, like one of those shows that it's like a 20-minute thing and there's a major problem that's wrapped up in like 15 minutes and everybody's hugging with a nice little cheesy theme song. Full House is a good example. You have 3 kids that are hugging at the end. That's not how it happened in my household. Like, we were not in a sitcom. Like, when my mom was very good. You're going to hug your brother until you guys really mean it. And my brother Jason, we're looking at each other and we're like, I'm not doing it. We refused to do it. Fine, go to your room. We shared the same room until we were 12. We had bunk beds. And I would jump on him, but we had fun. It was fun, but I didn't choose peace over position that time. He didn't either. He's older, 17 minutes older. He chose position over peace all the time. I'm older than you. I'm your boss. But he wasn't my boss. But let's look at Genesis chapter 13, verse 8. I love this. Finally, Abram said to Lot, let's not allow this conflict to become between us or our herdsmen. After all, we are close relatives. After all, we're family. And I understand, some of us are from a messy family. And some of us don't have to look outside of our household to see dispute in your house. Okay? Some of us, the dispute is right in your own home. And Abram does the mature thing. He says, you know what? This is a huge issue. Let's not allow this conflict to actually come between us or our herdsmen. I love that because that's so mature. Let's choose, he said, the path to peace. So that gets us to something that's shocking. Now, how many of us have ever, when you were right, you wanted to say you're right and you wanted to show everybody you're right? I'll give you a 3-point sermon that you're never going to forget about how right I am. The thing is that when you say stuff like that, you won't say sermon, but you may do a little speech that you prepared. You're never right, even if you're right. Okay? And Abram, he did something shocking to me. I was reading this and going, wow, he did something I don't think I could have done. Verse 9, he says, the whole countryside is open to you. Just think a picture in your mind of Egypt. There's a lot of land there. North, south, east, west. It's like ready to go. And Abram says, the whole countryside is open to you. Lot, take your choice of any section of the land that you want and we will separate. Pause. I was practicing this, and I was thinking about this when I was a kid. Me and my brother, we shared a room, and we literally did the line in the middle of the bedroom thing. Like put a piece of tape in between. Did anybody else do that? Okay, yeah, amen. Some of us did that. And the only way I could get over that line, because my brother wanted this side of the room, the door's over here, and mine's over on that side. The bunk beds were separated at that time. I could sneak in there, but I had to go towards the wall and cross both fingers or something. It didn't count. But we had a dispute over which side of the room we could have. And my brother, who's older, apparently had priority over choosing what side to get. And then also when my home was expanded to another bedroom, he was the older one, so he got to go to the former master bedroom, which in that house was not a huge house, but it had a walk-in closet, which I wish I had. And I still wish I had that, but that was beside the point. But Abraham, who is older, he's the elder, he's the man of God, he has the calling, God has a place for him to go. He says, take your pick, anything that you want. If you want the land to the left, I'll take the land on the right. But if you prefer the land on the right, then I'll just go to the left. Remember, and some of us read this story and it's like, oh, it's boring. It's just about land. This is not about land. Okay? The thing is, Abram knows that he has a call of God in his life, and he has to get a specific place. He doesn't even know where he's going. So why is he giving Lot the first choice? Why has he got dibs? Right? And so it's funny because it's not about the land. It's actually about his relationship with God and peace and not being right. See, he pleases the Lord. Look at Proverbs 16 verse 7 says, when people's lives please the Lord, even their enemies are at peace with them. Listen, if you are seeking the path of peace, I want to be very clear, because I believe this. Not everybody is going to go, oh, that's so wonderful. But it's kind of like, you're not killing with kindness. I hate that phrase. But you are blessing those people who do not deserve it. And what you're inviting into the relationship is you're inviting the blessing of God to come between you. And what happens is healing and that kind of thing. But we got to live a life that's pleasing to the Lord. That's what Abraham did. He's choosing the path of peace. Peace is always better than tension. Those of us who married know that. How many of you guys like when you're married, you love being at striving, you're in strife. That's the word. I was going to say striving. That's different. You're at strife with your spouse. I can't stand that. It's so awkward in my house. We have a house that's only 888 square feet, so you can't hide anywhere. I do not have a man cave to go to. I don't have a garage to tinker in. My dad always did, and now I get it. He always went there and worked on his Chevys. Always. And I get it. And stay away. Right? I get it. But the thing is, if everything's going right in my life with people, with my family, and we're at peace with each other, it's much more enjoyable. 100%. 1,000,000%. So why do we choose tension? Because of hurt feelings. See, have you ever met someone who is so secure that they don't have to have the last word? They don't have to be right. They're going to live their life the way it is, and they're going to seek restoration and peace every single time. You know what that means? That's maturity. That's someone that's so close to God that says, you know what? God, if I'm right, God's going to fight my battles for me, and He's going to prove that I'm right. This happens at work sometimes. And if I'm at work and I have like 5 to 10 bosses, I don't even know. My direct boss I've never met before. It's crazy. But sometimes I'm guilty of my boss saying, noticing things that I'm not doing. I'm not doing things illegally. It's just not up to their standards, I guess you could say. And I could get very upset and and I do sometimes. Like, hey, wait a minute, I'll prove to you why I don't agree with that statement. You know what I've said over the years, lately, is I'm gonna let God fight for me, because every time I start opening my big fat mouth to them, they get madder at me. And I get texts and calls, because they're in Lewiston. That's where my bosses are. And boss always shows up on a couple times a week, but it's just choose the path of peace every single time. Now, the last point is so important. Lot, he chooses by sight. Abram chooses by faith. Now, those of us who knew the story of the Bible, Lot chooses what looks best. Now, does anybody on top of that, you don't get in trouble if you don't know. I told you where it was, so don't say it. What piece of property did he actually choose? Did he end up choosing? Oh, that's okay. What did you say? He chose right next to Sodom and Gomorrah. Do you guys know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? You're going to find out. See, everything that glitters is not always gold. That's an old country song that I heard the other day that popped in my head as I was doing this. Okay? Everything that looks shiny and nice in your life doesn't mean that's from God. That's not the way always. So let's look at this, because he chooses Sodom and Gomorrah right outside of it. Okay, we know how that goes, but it hasn't happened yet. He says, and I kind of cut off there, it says, Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley. What's the word? Fertile. Everybody say fertile. Wow. He's like, this is going to be good. Remember, if you have land, why not have fertile ground? How many of you guys have fertile ground and you're planting stuff? Or you're like us, you have rock everywhere? Yeah. That's how it is right here. But he says, Lot took a long look at the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley in the direction of Zoar. The whole area was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord. This is a flashback to the Garden of Eden. Okay? Or, he goes, it looks like the beautiful land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Verse 11. Lot chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley. Well, wouldn't he do that? The whole Jordan Valley. What's the Jordan Valley? Fertile and beautiful. Listen, let's say that you're getting ready to move somewhere and you're just like, some of us are guilty of throwing something at a map, like a dart, and you're going, I'm moving right there. But some of us were like, I want to move there because there's mountains, or there's a river, or there's stuff to do, or there's people, or there's no people. He does that. He looks and he goes, this is beautiful. But he chose for himself the whole Jordan Valley to the east. Everybody say east. East. Anybody remember what I said about the east in Genesis? Always, and I don't know why. I had this told to me when I was in college. Not everything is, not always is east because they disobey God. But in Genesis, when someone chooses to go east, it's always because they're trying to run away from God. Okay, and that's what Sodom and Gomorrah becomes. Okay, he went there with his flocks and servants and parted company with his uncle Abram. I love that Uncle Abram. That sounds like a TV show, right? But so Abram settled into the land of Canaan, and Lot moved his tents to a place, what? Near Sodom. What happened to Sodom? God destroyed it. Boom! In fact, you can Google it on your own time. Look at modern Sodom, and you've got all sorts of evidence of the city being there, and evidence of it being destroyed, as the Bible says. That's one of the reasons why I believe the story to be true, is the archaeology actually proves it. And so I challenge you to dive down that. It's fun. At least to me it is. But he moved his tents to a place near Sodom, and he settled among the cities of the plain. So that's where he's going. And Lot chooses what looks best. How many of us, we choose only what looks best from the outside? Everything's, that's so beautiful. Again, the country song that popped in my head for some cheesy reason, everything that glitters isn't gold. Everything that looks good isn't always good. Everything that's shiny on the outside doesn't mean it's going to lead you to God. Sometimes God will lead you through the hard place, or the place that's not as obvious, to get you to where he wants to go. If Abram would have chosen the other place, Sodom in that area, things would have been a little bit different. But because Lot chose Sodom, God blessed Abram and said, I'm going to give you all the land anyway. I mean, how do I look at verse 13. But the people of this area, Lot's area, Sodom, they were extremely wicked and constantly sinned against the Lord. Boy, that was a beautiful place to pick. You know, you can go there and go fishing, you can go hiking, you can do everything you want, but there's also child sacrifice. There's, husbands sacrificing their wives literally. Everything that looks great isn't always God's will for your life. Sometimes God's will doesn't look like it's a blessing. The blessing comes later. Like sometimes we only choose, quote, God's will because it looks good. Ooh, I think God's calling me to Hawaii. Ooh, like if God calls me to Alaska, forget it. It's beautiful. I'll tell you, it's beautiful. But man, it's cold. Let's go to North Pole, Alaska. It's a real place. The thing is, I don't know, how cold does it get there? You watch those people on YouTube sometimes. Negative 60. Not bad. Not bad. I don't want that. Hawaii's the obvious choice, except Hawaii rains a lot. Okay? But Hawaii's the obvious place. I'll go to the beach every single day, Lord, and I'll preach your gospel around the whole beach if you just call me there. I think you're calling me there. So, look at verse 14 and 15. Because Abram was choosing the path of peace, After Lot had gone, the Lord said to Abram, look as far as you can see in every direction. Which direction? North and south and east and west. So basically, everything that you can see. Lot is not going to be in a place that's going to be good any longer after a while. You know what, Abram? I'm giving you everything. I'm giving all this land as far as you can see to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. We would call that Israel right now. That's the modern day Israel is a lot smaller, but it was that whole Middle Eastern part along the Mediterranean Sea. He goes, that's the place I'm calling you to have. So we're going to be closing in just a moment, but this is the call to action. There's 3 things, and I'm going to give you a couple specifics, and then we'll be done. But the call to action is choose peace, trust God, and let go of the rest. Let go. Pastor, you can't tell me to do that. I can't force you to do that, but I know from experience that when you let go of certain things in your life, you're a much happier person. And you're better to be with. Right? How many of us, man, some of us, including me, sometimes I'm so grumpy that I don't even want to be with me. But I can't remove myself from me. I'm like, I don't know what it is. So you can become a great version of yourself if you let things go and allow God to heal. So choose peace, trust God, let go of the rest. And so just a couple closing points and we'll be done. The call to action really is choose peace even when you could choose power. I would say maybe instead of being right, choose peace. Be the mature one. Now I'm really preaching, I better not, right? You don't have to win every fight, Pastor Joel. See, notice I said that to myself. Now, I'm not talking to you right now, I'm talking to me. But you don't have to be right every single time. Number 2, this is huge. Let go of what you can't control in your life. You can't control the actions of other people. You can control the actions of you. No, I can't. Then you got a problem. If you can't control your own actions, you need to seek God. I can always, if me and my wife are in disagreement, I don't have to respond the way that sometimes I do. I don't have to. And I can blame it, well, it's because of my family and how we argued a lot when I was a kid. There was a lot of yelling when I was a kid. That's the only way that I've ever seen it happen in my life. I'm 45 years old. I should know better than that. I can choose to let go of what I can't control. Number 3, don't choose things in your life by sight. Choose by faith. God is going to lead you where you need to go. See, not every opportunity that looks good is good. How do you know what God is wanting? You got to choose wisdom and seek His face and listen to Him. Trust God to honor your humility. It's like the words drop down. I don't get it. Okay. Trust God to honor your humility. And last, this is huge, walk into this week believing that peace is greater than position. It's greater. And so 2 questions and we'll be done. What's the name? Don't yell their name. They may be in this room. Who is someone that you need to seek restoration and forgiveness with? Who is it that you need to forgive? They may no longer be alive. They may be your ex-spouse. They may be someone that's treated you like garbage, and that's saying it nicely. I promise you something. If you allow God, not just you doing it in your own power, if you allow God to lead this, you're going to be much happier in your life. You'll be so much peaceful in here. It's amazing what God can do. And I'm not just saying that. I am living proof of someone that is not bitter anymore. Because of what God did. Not because I did it, but I recognize that I need God's help to forgive. So who is someone that you need to forgive? And where do you need to seek peace at? And we're going to close in prayer, but I want you to start thinking about those over the next few days or a week or a month. You need to start seeking restoration. Do your part and allow yourself to heal. You need to let your heart heal. And that's why this is important. Lord, This is such an important, vital message that I can't stress how important this is. It's difficult, yes. It goes against the grain of everything that we have thought. That if someone hurts us, we want to hurt them. Do unto others before they do it to us. That's what I lived out in my life. But God, you forgave us even while we're still sinners. And you showed us what it means to be loving and be kind and seek restoration. You did that in us. You restored us. You restored the relationship between us and your Father. And I thank you for that. But God, I pray for everyone in this room. I hope that this does not come across as a judgmental, I can't believe you have bitterness in your life. No, this is a sermon of hope, that things can be restored. Things can be brought into the light and brought right. And families that have been hurting for generations can be restored. But it has to go through your Spirit. It can't just be through our own wisdom and knowledge and our trial. We have to go through you, God, and you will bring restoration. God, I thank you for each person here. I love them and you love them. I pray for blessing as they go. In Jesus' name, amen.